David Grayson. He's a Professor Emeritus of Corporate Responsibility, Cranfield School of Management, United Kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a warm welcome.
Amy, thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, if we can move to the first slide. When Odebrecht, the Brazilian construction company, bribes politicians, when you have Volkswagen fraudulently evading their responsibilities with the emissions test scandal, when BP was negligent in the Gulf of Mexico with the disaster of Deepwater Horizon. Now today, when Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook appear to be quite slow to understand the challenges about data privacy. All of those, ladies and gentlemen, are examples of corporate irresponsibility. Ignoring your responsibilities or being negligent about your responsibilities now costs. It costs in money, it costs in lost reputation, it costs in terms of license to operate. So my first message, ladies and gentlemen, is that corporate responsibility matters. And I don't know whether the team could just make sure that we've got the screen working, because it's not at the moment. Thank you very much. Corporate responsibility matters. And corporate responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, is not corporate philanthropy or employee volunteering. Mr. Meshai was absolutely right. It is not those nice people in the CSR department down the corridor doing some good projects whilst the rest of us get on with running the business. Corporate responsibility is about how business behaves. It's about how it treats its employees, how it treats its customers, its suppliers, its competitors, the communities in which it operates and from which it draws a license to operate. That is what corporate responsibility is all about. The European Commission, back in 2011, defined corporate responsibility as the responsibilities that a company has for its social and environmental and economic impacts. Almost 40 years ago now, the distinguished American academic, now Professor Emeritus Archie Carroll, talked about corporate responsibility as the expectations that society has of business at a given point in time. And I think that point about changing expectations is very important. I would add also that, of course, the expectations that we have of businesses have been evolving at different paces around the world. In Europe today, for example, we now think about the responsibilities that a business has in terms of its workplace, its marketplace, its impacts in terms of the environment, and on wider society. And those expectations continue to grow. We see debates now around what responsibilities does the modern corporation have for modern slavery, for example. One of my particular areas of interest right now, the subject of my last book, which you can get outside by the registration desk. You see, I'm an ex-Procter & Gamble marketing man, so I never miss a marketing opportunity. But sorry, if we could go back one, please, because I nearly did miss the marketing opportunity. One of the questions the company now has to think about is what responsibilities do we have as part of diversity and inclusion for our employees who are juggling their job and caring for a family member or a friend. In many parts of the world now, that is a significant part of the working population. And so we see these expectations continuing to grow. And one of the important points, I think, is that As we have a more globalized, connected society, then clearly our understanding about corporate responsibility starts to converge. We have seen it in this Asian Forum on Enterprise for Society, with the debates yesterday around what responsibilities do businesses have for artificial intelligence. All the ethical questions about artificial intelligence, for example. So DeepMind, which is the big Google company around AI, have recently established an ethical research unit, not just with ethicists, but with lawyers and sociologists to try to explore what are the ethical implications of the advances in AI. And some of the other questions I think that we are increasingly going to be thinking about in terms of corporate responsibility. What are the opportunities that come from blockchain and other forms of AI in terms of being able to track what is happening in our supply chains, and therefore to be able to have greater traceability and greater transparency? What are the opportunities in terms, from the first sessions we had this morning, about the future of energy? What are the implications of the so-called stranded assets debate for those in the energy sector, oil and gas and so on? And of course, you may have seen very recently the story of the Dutch supermarket chain that has started to introduce plastics-free aisles because they are recognizing the challenges of ocean plastics as one of the coming issues of responsible business. Now, in fact, the Edelman Trust Barometer, and I'm a great fan of the Trust Barometer, which they've been running every year now since 2000. Last year, when they identified that trust across the world in all of the sets of institutions that they track had simultaneously declined, they said there are a number of critical issues, like paying your tax fairly, like not aggressively offshoring jobs to parts of the world where there are lower standards on environmental and health and safety issues. Those are the kind of questions and response set of factors. Not to be leaders, but simply to be regarded as having a legitimate right to have a license to operate. So my next message is that not just does corporate responsibility matter, and it's about the core business behavior, but expectations around the world are growing all the time. Now, the reality, ladies and gentlemen, in the face of that, is that businesses are at different stages of corporate responsibility maturity. There are lots of different academics and practitioners, not least my good friend and colleague, Professor Brad Guggens, who has written about stages of corporate responsibility maturity. And in essence, some businesses are still in denial that they have any wider responsibilities for their social and their environmental and economic impacts. Many are still at the stage of being a complier. We will comply with whatever are the laws in a particular country and the local custom and practice, but no more. More are they now recognizing that they have to be risk mitigators, understanding where some of the risks are if they are going to understand their responsibilities for their impacts. And I always tell my MBA students, where it starts to get interesting is when you move from the risk mitigator stage to the opportunity maximizer, to start to look for business opportunities from taking responsibility for your impacts. And of course, theoretically, some businesses are at a champion stage, sharing their knowledge and expertise with other businesses. And where you move from the risk mitigator stage to the opportunity maximizer, I think we're moving from corporate responsibility on its own also to corporate sustainability. creating value simultaneously for the business and for society by managing both the risks of negative social and environmental and economic impacts and maximising the positive impacts that we have. And that's not new, ladies and gentlemen. Many years ago, shortly before he died, Peter Drucker, the great management guru, talked about every social issue and global problem as being a business opportunity in disguise. A business opportunity in disguise. I think part of our opportunity today is to start to get those opportunities out of the disguise and into the boardrooms and into operations. And that's why I think it is so important and so exciting that businesses across the world are now recognizing the business opportunities for taking responsibility for the Sustainable Development Goals, not on their own, but in collaboration with other parts of society. Last year, or the year before rather now, the Business and Sustainable Development Commission calculated that the business potential, the business opportunities from business fulfilling the SDGs and contributing to their implementation represents a market opportunity of 12 trillion, yes I said trillion, not billion, dollars across the world. In Asia last year there was a supplement which talked about the particular opportunities here in Asia, something like 5 trillion opportunity, with millions of jobs also potentially to be created. From being proactive, from being an opportunity maximizer in terms of responsible business. KPMG, the big global accounting and consulting company, who've been tracking companies and their reporting of corporate responsibility since 1993. They produce a very good report every 2 years. In their most recent report, published at the end of 2017, they talked about an increasing number of companies that they found were integrating the SDGs with corporate strategy and were beginning to report on the implementation of their SDG strategy. They've tracked something like the 250 largest companies in the world, and in the 49 largest economies of the world, the 100 largest companies in each of those countries. So it's a very representative sample of big businesses. So I think we need to take the business opportunity much more seriously. How do we do that? John Brown, who for many years ran BP, when it was one of the largest companies in the world, wrote a book back in 2015 with Tommy Sadlin and Robin Nuttall. And they said in that book that business, if it wants to reconnect with society, has to do 4 things. First of all, it really must understand what are its material, social, and environmental and economic impacts. Because those of the IALA group will look very different to Finmar and will look very different to Golden Agri-Resources and so on. So understanding your material impacts is critically important. And the good news is that there's a lot more guidance now. You have things like the Sustainability Accounting Standards Boards. You have most trade sectors now, where there is some identification of what are the material impacts for that particular sector. You have good practice from the leaders in the sectors in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index in their annual sustainability reports that you can learn from who are the leaders in your sector and what are the impacts that they have identified. The centre that I was responsible for in my university, we published a simple how-to guide which you can go on to our website and download for free. The second thing, said John Brown and his colleagues in their book Connect, that businesses need to do, if they are really to take responsibilities for their impact seriously, is that they need to understand what is their purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of business is not maximizing shareholder value. Optimizing shareholder value over the medium to long term should be the consequence of a well-run business, but not the purpose. Each business needs to define for itself what is its purpose. Purpose, in a very deep, authentic way, is understanding how the organization creates value for the business and simultaneously for society. If you like, a much deeper, showing up form of what Porter and Kramer called their shared value. So these are the issues in terms of understanding purpose. If you are interested, I did a breakfast conversation with the CEO of one of our big businesses back in London last month, which you can find on YouTube. It's the Grant Thornton UK CEO, Sasha Romanovich, and I in conversation. If you Google that, you should find it. The third thing that John Brown and his colleagues said in their book, Connect, is that businesses need to apply world-class management skills to corporate responsibility. And what did he mean by that? It means, of course, having clear leadership, the tone from the top, having a board which sets the direction and checks on the progress, is both a cop and a coach, is understanding both the risks and the opportunities from corporate responsibility. It means also engaging, exactly as Mr. Meshai said, all of the people in the business. This is everybody's business. I'm fascinated by the growth of what we call employee-led social innovation for the business, social entrepreneurism. There's another book outside about that topic as well. But also, world-class now means setting what we call science or evidence-based targets. It started around climate change and company commitments around climate. In the past, you might have companies saying, we might reduce our carbon emissions by 10% by 2025. That's not good enough. Science or evidence-based targets start with what is the contribution of that company to carbon emissions, and therefore, what does that company need to do in order to achieve the Paris climate change commitments? And I think we will see the extension of evidence-based targets to other parts of corporate responsibility very quickly. And the last thing, said John Brown, and these are his words, not mine, businesses need to radically engage with different parts of society. That's about collaborating, sometimes with your competitors, sometimes with pesky NGOs that may also be criticizing you, sometimes with governments and regulatory agencies, sometimes even with academia, to create the kind of partnerships that we need if business is really to take responsibility for its impacts. When we were talking, for example, about artificial intelligence yesterday, I quoted the illustration of the artificial intelligence partnership started by some of the world's largest companies in AI to think through just what are our responsibilities. That's an example of radically engaging. Now, in a few weeks' time, I will be publishing, together with a couple of colleagues, Chris Coulter from GlobeScan and Mark Lee from Sustainability, a new book which we call All In, the Future of Business Leadership. We take 20 years worth of the GlobeScan and Sustainability Leaders Surveys, where across the world for 20 years, they've asked experts in business, in NGOs, in civil society, and in the media and in governments, who are the companies that are leading on corporate sustainability? So it's a pretty unique set of longitudinal data. And then we went and interviewed the business leaders who were running those businesses when they were regarded as the top leaders in corporate sustainability. So people like Chad Holliday in DuPont, or Jeff Immelt in GE, or Paul Pullman in Unilever. And we talked to them about what they believe will be required of business. What will be the new business leadership model for the 21st century, and specifically to take us to 2030, and hopefully the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And if anyone is interested in learning more about all of that, please give me your card or make sure that I get it through the Secretariat, and we will happily keep you informed about that particular book. So ladies and gentlemen, in concluding, I've really got 5 key messages this morning about responsible business, corporate responsibility and its future. First of all, it matters because this is about the core of how business behaves, how it operates, how it conducts itself. Whether you like it or not, expectations across the world are converging and they are growing in terms of corporate responsibility. The reality is still that businesses are at different stages of maturity, and we actually have to get many more of those businesses now to go all in terms of not prevaricating, not being half-hearted in their commitment to be a responsible business and to commit to sustainability, but to go all in. And also we need many more businesses to join in. We need all of them to go in. For now though, let me leave you with, and if you're interested, I will be, with the help of the AFES Secretariat, be posting the annotated version of these remarks to their website and also onto my personal website in due course. And as some of you already discovered, I do tweet occasionally. But for now, let me leave you with the words of Larry Fink. Now, Larry Fink, I think, is worth listening to. He's not some tree hugger. He's not some NGO. He's not a corporate responsibility professor, dare I say it. He actually is the guy who is responsible for the world's very largest institutional investment fund, BlackRock. $7 trillion of funds under management. And for several years now, he's been writing annual letters to the CEOs of the companies in which he and BlackRock invests. You can Google them. The 2018 letter, which came out at the end of January, is particularly important. It's only three pages, so it's a quick read. And in that letter, Larry Fink says that society is increasingly turning to the private sector and asking that companies respond to broader challenges. The public expectations of companies, both public and private, he says, have never been greater. Society is demanding that companies serve a social purpose to prosper over time. Institutional Investor says this, to prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show it makes a positive contribution to society. We're not saying this is either or. It is now the genius of the and, the Collins and Porras built to last. This is both. Larry Fink talks about companies needing to benefit all of their different stakeholders. And he concludes, without a sense of purpose, no company, either public or private, can achieve its full potential. It will ultimately lose its license to operate from key stakeholders. So, ladies and gentlemen, do we need a new model of business leadership? You bet. And I hope I've given you some inklings of just what that might be this morning. Thank you very much.